Alright, Twist of Fate is absolutely busted and you cannot change my mind. Hey Summoners, what's going on? My name is Nathan Ng and I'm here to run you guys through another ProGuides High ELO tier list. This time we're going to be running you guys through our tier list on patch 10.11. These lists are more catered towards higher ELO players, as the data used in this video focuses on both platinum and higher as well as elite levels of play. We'll be going over some of patch 10.11's changes, but we've covered them more in depth on our patch rundown earlier this week, so make sure you check that out as well. I want to mention that you can join our Discord as well as our subreddit in the description down below. We want to connect with you guys, so make sure you check those out. Finally, our question of the day: what's something that you see someone do with the champion and instantly know that they don't play that champion that much? One example I have is when I see Kled players instantly level up their W. Kled players usually want to save that level up for when they manage to land a Q and get a nasty first trade. Leveling it up immediately forces them to expend their W's cooldown on the next basic attack, and you know, that kinda sucks. Let me know where your answers are in the comments down below. First up, let's kick things off by running through the top lane. Real quick, do note that the Ezreal item has received a 2% movement speed buff this patch, and this will create a ton of shifts across all roles. In the top lane, Gangplank is one of the champions that will receive a direct balance change this patch. His base attack speed has gone up from 0.658 to 0.69. While we covered the effects of these changes extensively in our original patch rundown, let's reiterate them here. What this buff does is that it provides more incentive for Gangplank players to build a Phantom Dancer in place of Syrinx Cage. The classic Glass Cannon 1v9 Gangplank builds should be much more popular because of this buff, as well as the Ezreal items that are also buffed. Of course, with some more base attack speed, this also means that Gangplank's laning will be a lot stronger than before. Our analysts firmly believe that Gangplank will remain a solid A tier pick in high ELO and even feel like an S tier in the right hands. However, our analysts are going to continue to keep an eye on Gangplank's statistics. This was a much bigger buff than meets the eye, and don't be surprised if he moves up to the S tier by the next patch. For an even faster update, make sure to check out our YouTube channel next week. We'll upload a mid-patch update where we're talking about champions like Gangplank as well as some other ones who received changes this patch and follow up on them. We've also expected to see much more Hecarim top as he is getting buffed, but we'll talk about his changes in the jungle section. It's something that we just wanted to briefly mention as we've seen Hecarim top dominate solo queue in the past, and we're sure to add him to our tier list next patch if he's able to produce results similar to his past glory. Next, let's run it through our tier list. Before we run through our top tier champions, let's change it up and talk about the various shifts that we move from the bottom up. First, Lucian has been moved up to the B tier. Lucian is a notorious lane bully, and now that his late game has been buffed, he's gonna scale even harder in the late game. The top lane is flooded with juggernauts who fall off in terms of utility, even if their damage can't be written off. High ELO players can take better advantage of Lucian's rain advantage. We'll be talking about the Lucian buffs in our bot lane section, so don't fret if you're not aware of what they are. Next up, Tryndamere, Garen, Yasuo, and Soraka have all been placed in the A tier. Our analysts have had more time to gauge her power level and accurately predicted that she belongs in the A tier. Looking at all these champions, it's no wonder that nobody really wants to play top lane, but I mean, hey, if you like suffering, then that's the lane for you. Soraka's statistics are quite impressive as she sported a 52% win rate last patch, and what's barring her from being S tier is her low play rate, implying that this win rate is inflated by players who are not prepared to play against it. Tryndamere, Yasuo, and Garen are going up on the tier list as a result of Ezreal items receiving a buff this patch. With extra movement speed, these champions now have an easier time to stick into their opponents. And I'm sure what the most of us, regardless of the rank, already have had their image of Tryndamere, Yasuo, or even Garen hunting us down, followed by a Grayskin etched into our memory. High ELO players are better at kiting, but given these sort of champions have more movement speed, they will be much more harder to kite than before. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the S plus and the S tiers. In our S plus tier, we have Darius, Fiora, Wukong, and Maokai. They're still dominating high ELO as the most impressive picks at the moment. In the S tier, we also have Kled, Shen, Jax, and Renekton. We expect Tryndamere to possibly join them, but his dominance will likely be more prominent in low and mid tier ELO. Our analysts will continue monitoring the top lane closely, taking note of whether any major shifts need to be made next patch. Now let's go ahead and run through the jungle. First up, Volibear's rework ships this patch, and thus we've left him unrated like we always do with the new champions. Our analysts tentatively believe that he's an S or an S plus tier pick, but we have to let you guys know next time. Make sure to check out our mid-patch update next week though, because we'll be sure to place him in a general ranking there. Graves is up for the nerf hammer this patch. He's been way too strong, especially in high ELO, and Riot has finally decided to smoke him off from the spotlight. Well, except Not really, because he's still going to be insanely strong. Though his Q's initial damage ratio has been reduced from 100% of bonus 80 to 80% of bonus 80, he's still going to be a high-paced, snowbally favorite amongst the high elo players. It's likely that this build will see some changes, however, as those zeal buffs will affect him as well. Graves will remain in the S+ tier for now. He's simply too good for too many different reasons. His incredible dueling, clear speed, and scaling all merit him as one of the strongest junglers in the game in spite of the nerfs. Fiddlesticks, on the other hand, was buffed. His passive now allows him to fear enemies. The buff that he received is that now that if he's posing as an effigy, he's able to terrify enemies that are hit by his abilities. Even if his opponents see him, there's a possibility for Fiddlesticks to fear his opponents. With this buff, players can now be more creative on how they approach certain situations. On top of this, Fiddlesticks' W damage to minions has gone up from 40% to 60%. After successful ganks, he'll be able to help his laners push the waves more efficiently, or just quote-unquote tax them for free and just take all their minions for doing nothing. But hey, you know, what do I know? Fiddlesticks is expected to retain his S+ tier status as a result of these buffs. Hecarim has also received a nice little buff this patch. His Q's damage has increased from 55 to 215 to 60 to 228. However, his Q's damage to minions is going down from 66% to 60%. This buff is pretty huge, and our analysts have moved Hecarim up to the B tier as a result. He now has some more dueling power at all stages of the game. The fact that his bread and butter ability just got buffed is going to make him feel much stronger than before. In our S+ tier in the jungle, we have Rek'Sai, Elise, Wukong, Graves, and Fiddlesticks. Fiddlesticks is putting in work at the moment. His play rate is expected to skyrocket this patch due to his buffs. Last patch, he managed to settle just below 52% win rate while also taking the spot the 11th most played jungler in Platinum and higher. Fiddlesticks like Elise and Echo has created some diversity for team compositions. AP junglers are highly underrated as this allows mid laners and top laners to play physical champions to dominate their lanes. With how chaotic solo queue games can be, a champion who thrives in clumped fights like Fiddlesticks is an excellent choice to hard carry games. In the S tier, we have Lee Sin, Olaf, Kha'Zix, Rengar, Zac, Nidalee, and Kayn. Kayn's performance has been consistently solid, and our analysts decided to move him up to the S tier as a result. His red form continues to dominate solo queue games with his incredible sustain, decent crowd control, and high damage output. Kayn is able to stall for a lot of time as well, applying a lot of pressure to his opponents during fights. Death's Dance especially makes Kayn almost impossible to deal with at times. Enemies are forced to buy grievous wounds, and if they don't, it's actually a 1v9 jungle difference every single time. Kindred is expected to feel a little bit stronger due to the Zeal item buffs, but our analysts don't believe that they'll make her an S tier just yet. For now, she'll remain in the A tier as this buff will solidify her as a reliable marksman jungle pick. And that's it for the jungle, so let's go ahead and talk about mid next. Two very well needed nerfs are introduced to mid lane this patch. Talon has been the talk of the town for a while now. Once again, he's too strong in elite levels of play. Thus, his Q's mana cost has gone up from 30 to 40, and the healing on it when he lands a kill has been decreased from 20 to 71 to 10 to 71. High elo players will especially notice this change. Every little point of health matters. Fights should be much closer than they would be in lower elo. Less sustain also means that taking aggressive trades can be punished more heavily. With less sustain, talent players are going to end up being low way more often during the fights, and thus they're going to be more susceptible to ganks than before. For now, he'll only be moved down to the S tier. His high burst damage and insane roaming powers still merit him as a solo queue stopper, and this nerf won't really take away from that identity. And if you're a talented talent player, this shouldn't affect you that much. Syndra is also receiving a nerf, thank God. Her E's cooldown was increased from 16 to 12 to 18 to 14. Syndra was and still a little too good at everything. This nerf exposes her a little bit, however, as she'll be more susceptible to ganks as a result. An added 2 seconds on her only reliable disengage tool means that Syndra players will have to be much more careful after using it during trades. 18 seconds is an extremely long cooldown for her basic ability. It's an important part of Syndra's trading power as well, so it's not like Syndra players can simply stop using it. An increased cooldown means that after using it, Syndra will be more vulnerable to a jungle gank than before. While Syndra will remain in the S tier pick for now, she's on the cusp of dropping down to the A tier as a result of these nerfs now that she has an exploitable weakness. As a result, our S+ tier now consists of Cassiopeia, Zoe, and Galio, while our S tier now consists of Talon, Diana, Vladimir, Fizz, Wukong, Syndra, Katarina, and Twisted Fate. That's right, Twisted Fate is definitely an S tier pick right now. High elo players are better able to take advantage of Twisted Fates across the map pressure. With a bigger emphasis on macro play and impacting side lanes, high elo games are now the perfect place for Twisted Fate players. Players are good enough to understand certain concepts, but not good enough to avoid overextending. Everyone's trying to carry their games, and even in high elo, people are trying to pop off all the time. so players will often expose themselves and give the enemy Twisted Fate players opportunities to ult onto them. With the rapid fire cannon buff this patch, he's going to be a much stronger presence because of the extra movement speed that he'll have. The extended range gold cards and his chasing potential can now feel oppressive. And this also means that we'll see a mix of both AD and AP Twisted Fates emerge in the mid lane. Echo has moved down to the A tier as a result of him feeling like he's been falling off. Other assassins deal more reliable damage than him. However, Echo still has plenty of strengths that make him a powerful pick, and A tier is not that bad. Echo is not a bad champion by any account. He has great wave clear, great dive setups, and incredible burst damage. It's just that there are other champions who feel a little bit stronger right now. Yasuo has been moved up to the A tier conversely. Like we mentioned before, those zeal buffs are huge and Yasuo is going to feel much stronger with some extra movement speed, unfortunately. And that covers our mid lane changes, so let's go ahead and talk about the bottom lane next. First, let's talk about the general buffs the marksman received. Every bot lane marksman aside from Lucian, Calissa, Tristana, and Vayne had their base HP increased by 30 and their HP per level increased by 2. Corki and Quinn aren't traditionally played in the bottom lane anymore, so they're kind of left out here. Here's a quick list of the champions who are receiving buffs though. Aphelios, Ashe, Caitlyn, Draven, Ezreal, Jhin, Jinx, Caixa, Kog'Maw, Misfortune, Sivir, Twitch, Varus, and Xayah. Marksmen haven't felt as strong as they should have, and thus they've been given more health to help them survive. These changes shift the dynamic of the bot lane quite a bit. Lane bullies are a little bit weaker since their opponents are a little bit harder to kill. Aggressive bursty supports are a little bit weaker as well, while enchanters just got a little bit stronger. While this doesn't necessarily shift the status quo altogether, it's definitely some food for thought. For the most part, our tier list is going to stay the same, but there are a couple of changes that we need to talk about as a result of the various changes. There are some buffs that we need to quickly mention since the champions mentioned earlier just didn't receive the HP buff. First is Lucian. His passive's auto attack crit damage was buffed from 75% to 100%. If Riot chose to buff Lucian's base health, then he would have gotten way too much play in the top lane. Instead, they decided to play it safe and buff his late game up. And you know that's where the marksmen are supposed to shine, in the late game. Unfortunately, this does make Lucian weaker until the later parts of the game, but relatively speaking, it's not that big of a deal. He doesn't benefit at all from the buff until he finishes a crit item, and since Lucian players typically rush Blade of the Ruined King, this can definitely take some time during games. For now, he'll remain in the B tier. Calissa, as we all know, has been seeing some top play. In fact, personally, I've seen her play more top than bot lane, but hey, you know, range top champions, am I right? For the same reason, she was also denied an HP buff. Instead, her W's passive damage has gone up from 10 to 18% of her opponent's max HP to 14 to 18%. This buff is rather small in the early game, but by the 10-minute mark, it'll definitely allow Calissa to spike even harder into the mid game. 4% max HP is no joke, and it's a huge damage boost in the mid game, as this will be at least 40 extra damage most of the time. Her W's active mana cost has been reduced from 20 to just 0. Vision control is even more important in high ELO, and players are definitely going to appreciate the fact that Calissa players are going to be able to provide vision much more easily than before. In fact, it's literally free for them to cast her W to provide them and their team information. She's gonna move up to the A tier as a result of these buffs. Next is Tristana. Her base attack speed has gone up from 0.656 to 0.679. Rather than buffing her early game and making her too strong in the solo lanes, Riot has targeted her late game. Tristana remains in the A tier for now. These buffs are nice, and we'll definitely see her played in more solo lanes than before, but it seems like her laning won't be as strong as the previous patches because her opponents are now a little tankier than before. Vayne is the final champion on the list of the outliers. Instead of base health, her Q's AD ratio has gone up from 50 to 70% to 60 to 80%. High elo players are a little bit better at bullying the lane and preventing her from scaling up. She'll remain the A tier for now, as a buff is still a buff. This buff feels pretty small when compared to what the other champions received, but Vayne's already strong late game, so they'll be even more terrifying than before. Caixa was the only marksman to receive 2 sets of buff this patch. On top of the extra health that the marksman received, her Q's bonus AD ratio has been increased from 35 to 40%, while her R's cast range has been increased from 1500 to 2500 to 1500 to 3000. I don't know where to even begin. Caixa has always been a staple pick for high ELO marksman players, and now she's going to deal even more insane damage, and her itemization can be either AD or AP, and she can protect herself with the high mobility. She's basically everything that you can ask for in a marksman. Caixa has the tools necessary to 1v9 games, and it's not uncommon for Caixa players in high ELO to single-handedly take over the games. In our S plus tier lane for the bot laners, we now feature Ezreal, Caixa, and Varus as well. Varus' ban rates in Challenger are still holding up strong above 50%. This guy's just not fun to lane against. Players hate this guy, and for a good reason. His poke and utility make him so infuriating to play against. Speaking from personal experience, it just sucks to lane versus this guy, and I sympathize with players who share in this sentiment. Nevertheless, he's incredibly powerful because of how much damage he can deal safely. Varus, like Ezreal, can be ridiculous with his Q range poke and just poke down his enemies and win fights before they've even begun. On top of that, he can also help his team engage fights by using his ultimate. Caixa buffs this patch are huge, and we expect her to dominate solo queue this patch. Her popularity is already on the rise, and high ELO players are definitely looking to spam her at the moment. And that concludes our bot lane, so let's go ahead and wrap things up with the supports. In terms of balance changes, not much was done this patch. First, let's go ahead and talk about those Lux buffs. I guarantee that she's probably getting a skin soon. I mean, Riot, y'all know what you're doing here. But anyway, let's go on with this buffs. After detonating her E on an opponent, it now slows the opponent for a whole second as opposed to 0.25 seconds in the previous patches. This change is pretty big as it'll make Lux's E an even stronger spell than it already is. Lux's zone control is so much stronger than before as a result of this buff, and high ELO players are definitely going to be taking advantage of this as they'll be able to extend the slow duration to guarantee kills and also disengage fights way more effectively. We moved her up to the B tier to be more accurate to reflect her influence over games. Janna is up next. Her W's damage has been decreased from 55 to 195 to 55 to 175. This is going to hurt Janna's level 9 power spike and make her a weaker lane bully than before towards the end of laning phase. Although she was nerfed, our analysts are going to make the bold move by placing her in the S tier this patch. Like we just mentioned, Enchanter supports definitely feel stronger this patch with some tanker lane partners. Janna's main job is to protect her carries, and this will be much easier when they're tankier than the previous patches. Thus, our S plus tier consists of Senna and Bard, while our S tier consists of Thresh, Leona, Blitzcrank, Lulu, Yuumi, and Janna. Our analysts believe that among the Enchanter supports, Lulu and Janna are going to stand a cut above the rest at the moment. Soraka is also a powerful pick, but you can definitely feel underwhelming at times because of her inability to act without teammates. Yuumi, like Janna, is definitely going to be benefiting heavily from these marksman changes. A tankier marksman will be harder to kill. If Yuumi's lane partner is harder to kill, she's also harder to kill because, well, she's always going to be attached to them. It's a symbiotic relationship for sure, which sounds pretty amazing, and Yuumi will be a little bit stronger this patch. Anyway, that concludes our 10.11 high ELO tier list. I just want to go ahead and say a huge shout out to the editor who's editing this audio clip because I am recording this and I'm sure this is way over 50 minutes because I have not slept at all. It is 12 p.m. right now and I have not slept. So this video is very hard for me to get through, so if I made some mistakes, I hope you guys could be gracious, and if my voice sounded like it died halfway through, it's because it did. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to give a like, comment, and also subscribe so you can stay updated with all the different kinds of content that we're going to be releasing. Also, like I mentioned earlier, check out ProGuides.com if you're serious about climbing this season. We have some great coaches for you there and some great resources, and yeah, it's a good time to climb. Until next time, stay healthy and stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the comment section down below as well on the Rift. Have an amazing day. I'm gonna go sleep now.